The phone line suddenly went dead. Inside a federal prison in the United States, a guard stared at a screen filled with flashing alerts. The call had lasted less than 4 minutes, but it was enough. On the other end of the line, a convicted terrorist had spoken in short, strange sentences. Nothing sounded violent. No weapons were mentioned. No plans were named. But experts listening in real time felt their stomachs tighten. They believed the inmate was sending coded messages to someone on the outside. Within minutes, the prison went into lockdown. The inmate was removed from his cell, his papers seized, his prayer rug taken, and his limited contact privileges suspended. Intelligence officers replayed the recording again and again, slowing it down, breaking it apart word by word. The fear was simple and terrifying. Even from inside prison, a terrorist might still be directing harm. But this inmate was not in a normal prison wing. He was housed in one of the most secretive and tightly controlled places in the U.S. prison system, a communication management unit known as a CMU. And this was exactly what CMUs were built to stop. What the officers would uncover next would confirm why these units exist at all. How did America reach the point where prisons had to monitor every word, every letter, and every breath of certain inmates? That answer begins years earlier. After the attacks of September 11th, the United States faced a hard truth. Terrorists did not stop being dangerous once they were locked up. Some continued to inspire followers. Others tried to recruit new ones. A few attempted to plan attacks from behind bars. One of the most serious wake-up calls came from real cases involving men convicted of terrorism who continued to communicate with extremist groups outside prison. Some used letters written in code. Others used phone calls filled with harmless words that carried secret meanings. Investigators realized that regular prison monitoring was not enough. In response, the Federal Bureau of Prisons created communication management units. The first ones were opened in Terre Haute, Indiana, and Marion, Illinois. These units were not secret prisons, but they operated very differently from normal facilities. In CMUs, inmates were watched almost constantly. Phone calls were limited, recorded, and reviewed by intelligence staff. Mail was read carefully. Visits were rare and always supervised. Even group prayer was closely monitored. The goal was simple: stop terrorists from using prison as a base to spread ideas, give orders, or recruit followers. Many of the inmates sent to CMUs were already famous. Some were linked to Al-Qaeda. Others were involved in plots to bomb landmarks, attack military bases, or support foreign terror groups. One well-known example was inmates connected to international terror networks who had used coded letters in the past. For these men, CMUs were a shock. Inside, daily life was quiet but tense. Inmates lived with constant rules: no sudden movements, no shouting, no private conversations. Guards watched body language as closely as words. A simple nod or gesture could raise suspicion. Some inmates complained that the monitoring was too strict. Lawsuits were filed. Families said the inmates were being treated unfairly. Civil rights groups questioned whether CMUs went too far. But federal officials pointed to real evidence. In several documented cases, inmates in standard prison units had successfully passed messages to outside supporters. These messages helped raise money, spread extremist propaganda, or praise attacks already carried out. Investigators feared that without CMUs, future attacks could be planned quietly from inside prison walls. Back in the present case, intelligence officers dug deeper into the suspicious phone call. The inmate had spoken about weather, food, and memories from childhood. But experts noticed patterns. Certain phrases repeated. Certain words appeared in a strange order.
This was not casual talk. It matched patterns seen before in terror communications. As the investigation expanded, officials learned that the person on the outside had ties to extremist circles. Nothing illegal had happened yet, but the danger was clear. The system had worked just in time. The inmate was moved to even tighter restrictions. Still, a haunting question remained. If this much effort was needed to stop one man from speaking, how many others were still trying? And what would happen if even one message slipped through unnoticed? As night fell over the prison, the CMU remained silent, cameras glowing softly in the dark corridors. Somewhere behind reinforced doors, inmates sat alone, thinking, waiting, and watching. And outside the prison walls, authorities wondered whether the next threat would come from the streets or from a voice behind bars that no one caught in time. The alarm did not ring loudly. It never does in a communication management unit. Instead, a quiet red light blinked on a control panel deep inside the prison, a signal that meant something far worse than noise. It meant the system had found a pattern again. This time it was not a phone call, it was a letter. The letter had been written neatly, with no anger, no threats, no mention of violence. It talked about health, faith, and patience. On the surface, it looked harmless. Any normal prison might have delivered it without concern. But inside a CMU, nothing is normal. Analysts noticed that certain words appeared at exact intervals. The spacing was too perfect, the phrasing too careful. When compared to older extremist messages recovered years earlier, the pattern matched almost exactly. The inmate who wrote it had a long history. He was not famous to the public, but he was well known to federal investigators. Years earlier, he was convicted for providing material support to a terrorist organization. Prosecutors proved he helped move money and spread propaganda. When he was sentenced, the judge warned that his influence mattered more than his actions. That warning now echoed inside the prison walls. The letter never left the building. Instead, officers opened a full review of the inmate's recent behavior. Surveillance footage was pulled, meal times were studied, prayer gatherings were re-examined. Guards reviewed every moment he had contact with others. What they saw was subtle but disturbing. During group recreation, the inmate often positioned himself near younger prisoners. He rarely spoke, but when he did, others leaned in. He avoided long conversations, choosing short phrases and gestures instead. A nod here, a pause there, enough to suggest meaning without saying anything clear. This was how radical influence often worked inside prison. Not with shouting, not with violence, but with patience. Federal officials had seen this before. In earlier cases, inmates convicted of terrorism used faith discussions and shared grievances to slowly draw others in. They offered answers to confused men. They gave them purpose. Over time, some inmates adopted extreme beliefs that followed them even after release. This was the exact threat CMUs were designed to stop. The inmate was immediately separated from group activities. His movement schedule changed. His cell was searched again. Nothing illegal was found, but that did not mean the danger was gone. Inside CMUs, danger often lives in ideas. Years earlier, one of the most cited real-world reasons for CMUs came from cases where terrorists used prison communication to reach outside supporters. Investigators discovered coded letters praising attacks and encouraging future violence. Some messages were so carefully written that it took months to decode them. After those cases, prison officials realized that traditional monitoring was too slow. By the time a message was understood, it might have already been too late. Back inside the unit, tension grew. Guards were instructed to watch for changes in inmate behavior. Silence became louder. A missed meal, a delayed response, a longer stare than usual. Everything mattered. The inmate noticed the changes. He filed complaints. He asked why his privileges were reduced. He claimed his rights were being violated. This also was not new. Many terror inmates challenged CMU rules in court, arguing they were unfair or excessive. But courts often sided with the government. Judges pointed to real evidence, real plots, real lives lost. They ruled that national security outweighed comfort. As days passed, analysts finally decoded the letter. It was not a plan. It was worse. It was a message of encouragement. It praised someone on the outside for staying strong. It hinted
the second man had no terror charges. He was serving time for a non-violent offense, but guards noticed he started using the same phrases, the same pauses, the same careful language patterns. Investigators feared the worst. Had the influence already spread? Interviews were conducted. The second inmate denied everything. He claimed it was coincidence, but when analysts compared speech patterns, the connection was clear. Radical ideas had moved without written words, without phone calls, without letters, just through observation. This discovery sent shockwaves through the prison system. It proved that even the strictest monitoring could not fully stop influence once it took root. Officials faced a terrifying reality. CMUs were working, but they were racing against time. Because every day an inmate remained influential was another chance for ideas to grow quietly. As night settled again over the prison, guards made rounds under dim lights. Cameras followed every step. Inside his cell, the original inmate sat alone, calm and unreadable. Somewhere else in the unit, another man stared at the wall, repeating words he barely understood but felt drawn to. And outside the prison, intelligence agencies prepared for a question they could not ignore much longer. What happens when monitoring is not enough? And what would they do if the next threat didn't come from a message, but from a mind already changed? The decision was made before sunrise. Inside the federal prison, senior officials gathered in a secure room with no windows. Screens showed live camera feeds from the communication management unit. The mood was tense. What had been discovered could not be ignored. This was no longer about one inmate. It was about control. The second inmate, the one with no terror charges, was removed from his cell quietly. No alarms, no shouting. Other prisoners were kept unaware. He was placed in isolation for questioning. Investigators needed to know how far the influence had spread and whether others were already affected. What they learned was unsettling. The second inmate admitted that he had been listening, watching, learning. He said the first inmate never told him to hurt anyone, never mentioned weapons, never talked about attacks. Instead, he spoke about injustice, anger, and meaning, about feeling important in a world that ignored him. That was enough. Federal experts knew this pattern well. In past real-world cases across the United States, radicalization inside prison did not always start with violence. It started with belonging. Terror inmates used calm words and shared frustration to slowly pull others closer. This was exactly what lawmakers feared when CMUs were created. As a result, prison officials took extreme action. The original inmate was transferred again, this time to even tighter conditions. His recreation time was reduced to near zero. He no longer shared space with anyone. Guards rotated constantly so no personal familiarity could form. Every movement was logged, every breath observed. This level of monitoring was rare, but it had happened before. In earlier years, inmates linked to major terror cases had been placed under similar restrictions after intelligence showed continued influence. Courts later ruled these actions legal, stating that the government had a duty to prevent future harm, even inside prison walls. But the cost was heavy. CMU staff reported exhaustion. Monitoring every word, every letter, every movement took time and focus.
One mistake could mean a message slipped through. One missed pattern could mean lives at risk. Meanwhile, outside the prison, intelligence agencies began tracking people connected to the intercepted communications. No attacks were found, no active plots, but investigators believed the system had stopped something before it fully formed. That knowledge brought no comfort, because prevention is invisible. The public would never know what almost happened. Inside the CMU, silence became absolute. Days passed with no calls, no letters, no group activity. The inmates sat alone, staring at the walls, aware that every second was watched. Some guards believed he felt defeated. Others believed he was simply waiting. That uncertainty was the hardest part. Years of real-world data showed that some terror inmates never stopped believing. Prison removes freedom, not ideology. An ideology, once planted, is difficult to erase. The second inmate was eventually moved out of the CMU. Officials believed early intervention had stopped deeper radicalization, but his case became part of training materials for prison staff across the country. It proved something frightening. Even the strongest monitoring systems have limits. In response, the Bureau of Prisons increased training nationwide. Guards were taught to recognize subtle changes in behavior. Analysts refined methods to detect coded language faster. Communication rules became stricter. But critics spoke louder. Civil rights groups argued CMUs caused psychological harm. Families said inmates were being buried alive. Some former inmates claimed isolation made them worse, not better. Officials answered with facts. They pointed to real cases where terror inmates praised attacks from behind bars, to real letters intercepted before reaching extremist supporters, to real lives saved by silence. There was no perfect answer, only balance. Late one night, months after the initial alert, a guard noticed something small but strange. The inmate arranged his belongings in a precise pattern on the floor. No message, no writing, just alignment. Was it nothing? Or was it something else? Analysts reviewed the footage. They debated. Some believed it was meaningless. Others saw potential symbolism. In the end, they chose caution. Monitoring increased again, because in the world of terror prevention, assuming nothing can be deadly. As dawn approached, the prison remained quiet. Outside, the country slept safely, unaware of how close danger can come without ever making a sound. Behind reinforced doors and silent cameras, the battle continued. Not with weapons, not with violence, but with watching, listening, and stopping ideas before they escape. Yet one question still haunted everyone involved. If it takes this much effort to silence a single voice, what happens when there are many? The mistake almost happened during a routine shift change. A tired guard paused for just a second too long while logging activity in the CMU control room. Screens refreshed, audio feeds switched. For a brief moment, one camera froze. Nothing dramatic, nothing obvious. But in a place built to stop terror, even 1 second matters. By the time the system stabilized, supervisors were already reviewing the gap. Every second was replayed, every angle examined. Officials needed to be sure nothing had been missed, because history had taught them a hard lesson. Terror does not need noise, it needs opportunity. This fear was not imaginary, it came from real events. In past US prison cases, extremists had taken advantage of small cracks in the system. A missed phrase in a phone call, a letter delivered too quickly, a guard who did not recognize a coded pattern. Each time, investigators later realized the warning signs were there. They were just too quiet. Inside the CMU, the main inmate noticed the increased tension. Guards stood longer outside his cell. Meals arrived late. The silence felt heavier than before. He said nothing. He did nothing. That worried them most. Experts knew that some terror inmates test systems by waiting, by appearing calm, by letting guards relax. Then, when attention drops, they act. This was why CMUs existed. Years earlier, before these units were created, federal investigators uncovered cases where convicted terrorists used prison time to stay relevant. Some praised attacks overseas, others encouraged followers to continue the mission. A few tried to guide actions using coded religious language. Those discoveries changed everything. Now, every word mattered. The frozen camera showed nothing unusual, no movement, no signal, no message. Still, officials treated it as a warning. Monitoring rules were reviewed again, shifts were adjusted, staff were reminded that fatigue could be as dangerous as ignorance. Because terror prevention is a long game. Days later, intelligence from outside the prison confirmed what officials feared. The person connected to the earlier intercepted message had been speaking with known extremist sympathizers. No crime had occurred, but the connection was real. This meant one thing: the monitoring had worked. If the message had reached its destination, it might have strengthened belief, inspired action, or kept dangerous ideas alive. Instead, it stopped at the prison door. But success brought another problem. How long could this level of control last? CMUs are not large, they are expensive, they require constant attention. Each terror inmate placed inside represents a long-term commitment. Some will never be released, others may leave prison one day, carrying whatever beliefs remain. This reality weighs heavily on those who work inside. Guards do not see heroes or villains, they see people capable of harm, people capable of influence, people who may never change. The main inmate eventually stopped trying to communicate. No letters, no calls, no gestures. Some believed he had given up. Others believed he was adapting. No one could be sure. That uncertainty is the true enemy. Across the United States, prison officials continue